The story begins when a girl said to the boy, whose name was Kazuma, that she thought that they should put more thought to their environment. The boy replied and asked what was wrong. The boy also asked if she has become an environmentalist to suddenly start caring about environmental issues. The girl replied and said that that's not what she meant. Then the boy further asked, then, what was that? The girl replied that she was talking about the circumstances of her transportation. She felt bad for making Kazuma always carry her, and she thanked him for that. The boy replied and said not to worry about it. She replied that, however, the smell of sweat, the shaking, and the lumpiness make it rather unpleasant, and it was a confession of sorrow. The boy said that it was such a deep wound. Then there came another girl who said to Kazuma that she was so jealous of him, and she said that if he would change it, and then he said to wait, and he asked if it does mean that she had been dissatisfied all that time. Then the girl replied and said that it was not quite like that. But lately it has been particularly uncomfortable. Kazuma was so shocked, and he was sprinting with all his might. Then the other girl said that she sees that all that running must be pretty tough, and because of the extra burden, no wonder he was so smelly. Kazuma said that after all, they toured. That's all she can think of. And he asked if she has ever even considered how he feels, and then he also asked to tell him that, how should they be carrying her? She replied and said that maybe riding on a sofa or something like that. That would be a neat way to travel. And then she also said not to give her that, glad that he asked. And she said that that was impossible. Besides, they don't even have a sofa yet. Then she replied and said that how about riding on the one Aqua's water tricks? The girl Aqua said that more than usual, the water was coming out. Then the boy replied that how long did she think that she can keep the water coming? Then Aqua replied and said that on second thought, if it wouldn't be a kind of fun and maybe he could make some profit by turning it into an attraction. And the other girl also agreed and said that she was right, and the boy said to wait and think about this seriously. And also, if she was put off by his lumpiness, ask the darkness to carry instead. If she can deal with the armor, then she should feel pretty nice and soft. And he asked if she don't think that. And then Aqua came and said that that was totally harassment. And the first girl said to Kazuma that it was just disgusting. And Aqua replied that it was just as one would expect from Kazuma, and it was just as expected of Kazuma. And then Kazuma replied and said, while kneeling, to wait, and he was sorry and he apologized sincerely. And then they thought that what if Kazuma wore a down jacket, and someone replied and said that it will be too hot. And the first girl asked that what should she do, and then Aqua saw something, and she said to everyone that it was a monster. And the first girl said that it was a post-battle. In the end, and then Kazuma replied and said that he guessed that was the only way to go about it. And then he also said to try to endure it, and surely he didn't smell that bad today. He also said that if she doesn't like it, then he can dump her right there. And Aqua thought that Kazuma's back can be unpleasant, but not having to walk was nice, and she was so jealous. Kazuma was carrying the first girl on his back, and Kazuma said to shut up to Aqua, and the girl replied and said that who was he telling to shut up. And then she also said that he was being really noisy. And then Kazuma said that, as he thought, maybe that method was the most comfortable of all. The drool stains won't come off. In the way they were fighting with the monsters, and then someone asked, what about now? And then Kazuma asked, is it still not yet? And then someone again asked, how about now? Then Kazuma replied and said, go ahead and shoot, Negumin. And then he replied that those were the words he was waiting for. And then Kazuma asked Megumin if she didn't fumble, and the girl replied and said that Crimson Demons never fumble. It was the next day, and someone asked that girl what was wrong with Megumin, the girl who was doing that explosion. Darkness came and said to Kazuma that his teasing yesterday might have gone a bit too far. Then Kazuma breathed, and the girl said that she totally forgot. She just asked what she forgot. And he replied that it was the name of his precious explosion magic. Megumin replied that, speaking of, would it be too much of a problem to do that to her from now on? The girl said that she was not really feeling sad. Kazuma asked her what she was going to do. Kazuma apologized to the girl and said that he was sorry about yesterday, he went too far. He said that if she sees, then he got them a guest. He also said that if they want to compete, it was sure that if Megumin doesn't come with them, and he repeated that if Megumin doesn't come with them, then there is really no problem. Rather, that would actually lessen their hindrance. After hearing that, Megumin was angry, thinking it was repeated humiliation. She thought maybe she should blast it right there, as she wanted him to go down to get together with her. Then she said to stop that, and if he wants to die, then go outside and do it alone. It was the last explosion of her life. The girl who came as a guest said that now everyone makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Just the third day, she broke some of the guild's furniture, totally by accident. By the way, she secretly took some money from Kazuma and bought new pieces to replace them. Then Kazuma replied and said that if she was asking for a beating. Aqua replied and said that as long as nobody finds out, there never was any failure. They saw some monsters and thought those were the monsters they needed. Aqua said that if it was subjugation, they should be doable from Kazuma's punch. She also said to hurry and finish that. Suddenly, something massive came out of the forest. It was a one-shot bear. They wondered why such a thing was there, and it was heading their way, causing everyone to scatter. Kazuma wondered why these things always aimed for him and always found new and unexpected uses for her. He also thought that with only them left, let's gather them all in one spot. Everyone acknowledged and was coming. Now they were heading towards Megumin. There was a thing at Megumin's end, but she didn't want to use it. She said that when Kazuma is looking, she won't fire a single explosion. Then Kazuma replied and said that if she was still mad at him, as he already said, he was sorry. Kazuma thought that she was really holding a grudge against him, and what should he do? Megumin said that Aqua was handled with a couple mugs of alcohol, and she gets it can't be helped. Darkness got a couple insults. Aqua tried to do it, but for Megumin, then Kazuma replied and said to get that he didn't manage to dodge it. Megumin replied to Kazuma and said to get her right on the abdomen. He asked, will she be alright? She replied that she might not be able to make it, and she said to please stay still as she will go get Aqua. There is no use, and she said to use it, as she won't make it here in time, as he knows the limits of his body the best, and more than that, there was something he would like to see for the last time. Megumin thought about the explosion magic, and he said that yes, he wants to see her greatest explosion magic. Then Megumin replied and said to let it burn an image right into her very eyes. Kazuma thought what a shitty attempt at being a chuuni, and then Megumin realized that it totally worked. She said that she got it and leave it to her, she said to Kazuma. Crimson Black Blaze, the king of myriad world, the laws of nature amplified. She was the reason for all of the universe's correspondence, the atlas to collapsing destruction, and let the eternal hammer descend upon her foundation. Then she said that it was the one-shot bear. With her explosion magic, she shall teach him which of them has the strongest one shot. Megumin was lying down on the land, and then Kazuma said that she doesn't pretend like she fainted. She replied and said not to use that aqua-like voice. Kazuma replied that he got hurt and asked her not to worry as he didn't hear anything at all. He said that she did well and he knew it truly. Megumin's explosion magic was the strongest, and he was holding Megumin on his shoulders. She asked if they should head home. Her name was Megumin. Her calling was that of an arc wizard, Crimson Demon Clan's greatest genius, the one who controls burst magic. And then she saw something and thought, no way that man was going to throw away that small child. And then a person came and asked her to calm down, calling her Loli. And then they saw that helpless young girl's clothes. And then Megumin herself goes on the water, and she thought that it was another day of hard work behind them. And after a day of working, the hot water feels so tingly. And then she asked the other two girls, how did you two grow up to have such a mature soul? And then Darkness replied and said, what was that all of a sudden? And the other girl, Aqua, also said, it was nothing and it has no deeper meaning behind it at all. Then Megumin replied and said, as a user of burst magic, I just thought it necessary to have a body stature to match it. And Aqua replied and said that she sees, so she was yearning for Aqua-sama's divine arms and legs. And from now on, if she reverse and worship her, she has no choice but to teach her. And then Megumin thought that it was Darkness, and there was no burst magic inside the city. And she said that, but she was really annoying her. And Aqua said that anywhere she doesn't think she had done anything in particular. Before coming there, she used to do work that required a lot of sitting. And she asked, how about Darkness and if she has any daily routine? And Darkness replied and said that the thought of the enemy doing unreasonable things to her, as she has never missed a single day of mental training, just imagining the enemy's tentacles coiling around her. The consultation doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So she said that she can stop now, and she said that, well, anyways, she doesn't see why she was being so impatient. And she thought that Megumin was just fine the way she is, and even if Megumin's body was small, her burst magic was no laughing matter. She can always rely on her for that, the amazing firepower burning with passion. She looks forward to seeing it again. Megumin replied and said about the darkness and requested her to not use her bursts to fuel her fetish. The girl said that if manga has taught her anything, then it was that there is always demand for lowly soul types. Megumin was angry and asked her to stop calling her a lowly, and another girl said that with a little patience, even Megumin might one day grow bigger. Megumin replied and said that even back in the Crimson Demon Village, she was considered to be particularly petite. And then she also said that she noted that they should ask someone of the opposite gender. And there came Kazuma, and she said that it was nice timing, Kazuma. And then Megumin said to wait, as there was no need, and then they asked Kazuma, what does he think of their soul builds? Then Kazuma replied one by one. For darkness he said she was a bouncy and cute soul, but a massive masochist. And then she thought that Kazuma looks like he was ready to like her body thoroughly. And for Megumin's body, he said that she has a petite lowly, but burst maniac. Megumin thought that this wasn't what she asked for, but to truly master the path of bursts. And for Aqua, he said that she has a nice body build without being too ample nor slender. But she was the useless goddess, and she thought that to tell him the truth, she can tell that Kazuma was a boy at that age. And looking at her body with his devious gaze, and since she was a merciful goddess, she might be able to forgive him. And then Kazuma thought that all those body types in front of him, yet the contents and what was that supposed to mean? Megumin was using her burst magic when Kazuma was there and said that this passionate shockwave, the confident loud roar of detonation. However, the delicately sparkling flesh was making him feel rather poetic, and he concluded the points was 87 points. He also said that today was superb as always, and it was a nice burst, but not being able to move after she has shot. She was almost like a romantic cannon. And then Megumin replied and said that he can keep praising her more if he know. And then Megumin was on his shoulders, and he said that if she has gained weight, as it was just that she feel a bit heavier than usual. She replied and said that, of course, she haven't gained weight. It was because of that tea darkness made that morning. It was very delicious, so she drank a lot. Then he replied and said that to wait, and if they two were in such good terms, then she should have darkness accompany her on her burst routines sometimes, as to go every day was so tiring. She replied and said that that has nothing to do with this, and besides, being together with Kazuma was not really all that bad. And then she asked him if his heart just skipped a beat, and if it is something wrong, while calling him as Easy Zuma-san. And then he replied and said that maybe he should just leave her here, calling her lowly. Then she was very angry, and asked that, who are he calling a lowly? And then he asked her that if something was wrong. Then she replied and said that nothing was wrong at all. And then he said, don't say that with a face like that. And she was such a bad liar. And then he again asked what was wrong, as she was cold. And then she refused and said, really, there was nothing wrong. And then she said to now hurry up and let's head back to the mansion. And she said to hurry up to him, and then he replied and said to her to stop acting so violently. And then he asked that why she was in such a hurry, and if she had something planned. Then she refused and said that if they see, she thinks that she heard the call of Aqua, and she thought that, when did she become an evil god? And then he asked Megumin if she need to use the toilet. Then she replied and said that that's not it, as crimson demons don't use a toilet. It was just that she heard Aqua's cry for help coming from the mansion's bathroom. And then he asked if she was saying that because she was a goddess of water, and then he said that he got the point, and it was no need to say more, as he will take her. And then she asked to take her, and then she said that what did he think that he was doing as taking her to the bushes? And she also said that she knew that he was absolute trash Suma, and then he replied and said that what was that, and he will support her properly, so there was no need to worry. She replied and said that what did he mean by supporting her, calling him a brute Zuma. Then he asked her to shut up and said that the mansion was 50 minutes away from there, and he will just plug his ears while she finishes her business. And then she said that how dare he say that to a maiden like her, and she said that this was no longer harassment. That was a crime, a serious crime, she said. He replied and said that at least it was better than getting his back wet, and she replied and said that she already told him that crimson demons don't use, and then he asked her if she was ok, and to try and endure it. And if there is a shop on the way, they can stop there. Then she replied and said that she was Megumin Crimson Demon Clan's greatest wizard, and she just memorized a new spell, and she just learned to create water. Maybe she should test it out. He replied and said that it was no good. And he said that she was a liar and she was a wizard who was only good for burst magic. And she replied and said that he just said something that he shouldn't have. And further, she said that she can do much more than just burst magic. And she said to take that back, and if he don't, maybe she should aim her create water right there. Then he replied and said that, yeah, it was right. If she can do it, then let's see it. And let's see if she released that create inside her body water, calling herself contradictory wizard. Then she replied and said that she was talking about magic, and she said that he truly was the worst Scumzuma, and then maybe it didn't go well, and she said that that was bad and that was really bad. And then he replied and said her to wait and to calm down, and she said that it was no good. And her mana was starting to overflow, and he said that if she really can't hold it in anymore, and she said that this was really bad, and to make matters worse, the fluctuations are starting to get worse. Because of the burst, her body has no energy left. At this rate, there will be various ways to interpret. She feels like she was about to lose something important. He replied and said how to calm down, as there must be something he can do. There are going to be safe and optimal way where no one gets hurt. If not being drenched will be the least of her worries. She said that from this day onwards, she will be in constant danger of being struck by a storm of burst magic. And it was drenched, and that was it. And then she called Kazuma, and then she again used her create water magic. And then he said that now there was no need to worry about getting whole body. Later, in addition to burst magic trip, being woken up to a prank was added to Kazuma's daily routine. And she drenched. Megumin has been doing some thinking. She was in need of a new pose. She was aiming for advance to the next level as an burst user. In order to do that, she was going to need a cool new pose that was sure to stand out, and it was the standard pose. Kazuma thought that there might be something else needed, and he asked if she had come up with any good ideas, and she replied and said that she was glad that he asked. Then she tried a new pose and asked him, how about that? He replied and said that that was even worse than before. And then she replied, but I even made a double peace sign, and she asked if it was so. Then Aqua came and said, do not worry, as she can count on her, as there was only so much she can achieve alone. And then Megumin asked her if she do have any good poses in mind, and then she replied and said that they will have to use her combination technique. And she tried some poses, and then Kazuma found those poses even worse. And then Aqua said that posing like that in public would be kind of fun. And then Kazuma thought, of course she was getting excited. And then Customer said that he guessed that there was no other choice, and it looks like he'll have to teach her how it was done. And then she asked if he really will, and then he said to arm like this and legs like this, and then she said to Megumin to do 10 centimeters left, and he said to Aqua to raise her hand more, and they got it, and an hour later it was done. And then Megumin said that pose was amazing to Kazuma. It was like they were some sort of special force, and she loved it. Aqua also said that it was not bad. He replied and said that he may have been taken inspiration from an anime he saw a long time ago, but still, Aqua replied and said, now that they have their new pose, then they shall go and do today's quest. And Megumin agrees. Aqua said that it looks like today's quest was to bring down that frog that they saw on the land, and then Kazuma said, let's do this. And then Kazuma said to Megumin to finish this quickly with her burst. Then Megumin asked him to wait, as they haven't made their pose yet, and she asked if it was like this, and then he replied and said that she can do it later. And then she asked if they shouldn't execute that properly right from the beginning. And then he replied and said that she should worry about her surrounding. And Megumin realized that she was going through all of that again, and she was going to have recurring nightmare. And then she said to let's retire that new pose. And then Kazuma said that that was fast. It was the next day. Megumin said that she has an idea, that they were going to need new outfits. And then Aqua said that, what was that? As it sounds like fun. And then Megumin asked and requested to lend them their aid. Customer replied and said to do it herself. Kazuma was carrying Megumin on his clothes, and then she said to Kazuma if he could move a bit more gentle. Then he replied and said that, but if he keeps constantly slowing down, then there was no telling when they'll get home. Then she replied and said that the swaying and the shaking was making her sick. On this he replied and said that she should have told him that earlier, and somehow everything worked out. Then she asked if she really did something, and Kazuma replied and said to let him explain. Due to the town's request, Aqua went to showcase her magic tricks in other towns in hopes of deepening their relationships, and with Darkness visiting home, those two will be absent for a while. Meanwhile, Megumin and him went on a quest when suddenly they encountered an unexpected enemy. As a result, Megumin was hit by the enemy's magic, and this is how they got there. Being so tiny was nothing but an inconvenience, and she thought that she can't redact it in the toilet. And then Kazuma replied and said that, well, he was sure that she'll get used to it. And he also said that good things were that doll clothes fit her perfectly, and their food expenses are also going down. And besides, she already were lit, and he thought that she looked awfully cute, scaled down like that, almost like a living figurine and a dream come true, or that's how he sees it. Then Megumin replied and said that she doesn't know who these figurines are, but she can tell that Kazuma was currently imagining something indecent. The biggest problem was that she can barely use any mana. With her firepower, the best she was able to conjure was a tiny spark. And how was she supposed to keep on living? Kazuma replied and said that she goes again with the exaggerating. Aqua's curse reversal should turn into instantly back to normal. For the next 3 days, she should try to enjoy this experience she can't normally have, and Kazuma of all people should know that it was a big and a hard thing for Maggie, as there was no way her body can be satisfied unless she gets to shoot at something like that daily. Kazuma replied and said that he was going to go crazy if he has to endure this for another 3 days, and he guessed she was the kind of person who lives only for bursts. Still, he does feel a bit sad to see her reduced to this pitiful state. And so the great Kazuma offers her the present, a custom-made lab. If she fires at the wick, it will create a sound of burst as it lights up, and it should feel just like the real thing. Megumin found it amazing, and she asked when did he do that, and thanked Kazuma, and it was magnificent and she loved it. Kazuma replied and said that she was welcome, and he also said to let's test it first thing in the morning as it was starting to get late, so they should head to bed. And she too should get some rest. And he also said that he will take her to the room and try to hold her on his hands. And then she said, how should she put this, as just as she thought, being this small was making her feel lonely. And she also said that if he doesn't mind, she would like to stay there. Yes, there was uneasiness, and she can't sleep. And then she thought if it was because she was sleeping in the same room with Kazuma. It was sniff, and the futons were colder than she expected. If she turned on the lamp, it might work as a heater. And then she tried to do it with her burst with her stick, and it ignited. And she didn't put any oil in it, but it was no good. And at that rate, she was going to catch a cold. And then she tried to wake Kazuma by sitting on his face, right in front of his mouth, and she was so close, and at that rate, the Kazuma and her may end up kissing. And when she waited for that, she may end up getting eaten. And she wonders that whose mouth would be warmer, Kazuma's or a giant toad's. But then she realized that there was no time to be thinking about that. Then she again requested Kazuma to wake up, and then she was on the bed with Kazuma, and she thought that it was exciting. And that feeling of excitement, it was the same she gets from bursts or being together with Kazuma. And she thought that maybe Kazuma was right. She might as well enjoy that tininess a little bit longer. Sometimes later, Aqua's great spell returned. Megumin safely back to normal, and everyone was drinking up, and with that, daily life returned too. Her name was Megumin, and in order to fill her daily burst quota, she had brought Kazuma with her to the outskirts of the town. However, something feels wrong for a while now. Her step has been growing ever more unsteady. Her head has been hurting for a while now. Also, she thought that if Kazuma's detect enemy skill was so poor that he can't sense it, and if this could be a demon's attack, or perhaps the enemy's magic was so strong that he can't comprehend it. And then she saw something behind her, and she thought that when did that thing get behind her? And then she asked who was that monster, what have he done to Kazuma? And then Kazuma came and said to her that what was she talking about? As there were no monsters there, he realized that she was chanting, and he said that both of them will be engulfed in flame if she shoots that close, and asked her to just wait a bit. And it was too close, and it was way too close, and he requested her to stop it. But she did her burst, and it was the misfire. And then she asked him if he was safe, and Kazuma replied and said to don't ask. And then she said to lend her his clothes and requested him as it was a bit cold. Megumin caught a cold, and she was on the bed. And then Kazuma said to her that she could have told him if she was not feeling well, and then she said that having Kazuma to be so kind feels a bit strange. And she also said she feels a bit sad knowing he will probably be asking for the doctor's fee after this. But still, she thanked him. And then he replied and said that who did she think he was? They were companions, and there was no way he would be demanding a fee. And then she asked Kazuma if Aqua and Darkness were not there, and he agrees. And he said that those two left early in the morning, and she said that so that means the only one there with her was Kazuma, and he agreed, and then she said that she has a request. And she asked that if he will please listen to it. And then he asked about the request, and asked that why she was removing her quilt, and then she said that it was something that only Kazuma can do, and he asked that if he was the only one, and she agreed. And Kazuma said that she still has a fever, so try to avoid sudden movement, and then he thought that what was that, or if it could be that she was trying to tempt him. He thought that if that was what Megumin wants, then he doesn't mind, and then she said to let her go to shoot her burst right now. And she requested him as there was no way she could be satisfied by a burst that ended in a misfire, and she requested and she begged him. Kazuma smiled and said that he should have known. Several days later, she tried to pose and asked Kazuma that how did he like that one, and then Kazuma replied and said that he would give 73 points, and then she asked that why it was such a harsh scoring. She thought that the burst magic day after day was there and that love knows no bounds. Aqua said to Megumin, if you wouldn't like to see how many bursts she can cast until she goes actually satisfied. Then Kazuma said to Aqua, you are the useless goddess. He also said, what disturbing words she was spouting all of a sudden. Megumin also said, what she asked, it is just like what she said. He also said, what was that about casting? And even if she gave all of her mana, if it couldn't be the limit, still be 2, Aqua replied and said, she was talking about that she bought that potion that gives her unlimited mana for 30 minutes. If Megumin drinks this for the next 30 minutes, she can shoot bursts to her heart's content, and then she tried an endless barrage of bursts and asked her it was awesome. And she asked if she doesn't think that, and then she also agreed and asked her to wait a minute. Megumin asked Aqua, where did she manage to buy such a rare item, and she has got a bad feeling about this. Aqua replied and said, she bought from a mysterious merchant who was recently visiting the guild. Megumin thought, no way, that was legit. Aqua said, though it did cost her all of her money, and it was as saying something so outrageous with no hesitation. And with that, they can accept so many high-level quests, and by shooting multiple bursts, they can probably defeat many monsters they face. And when the time comes for their paycheck, they will easily make their money back, and even if Megumin shoots more bursts than normal, she should still end up feeling refreshed, and it was a win-win situation. Then Megumin replied and said her to do not tell her plans to keep all the money to herself, and then she replied and said that she was not going to do that, and then she asked Megumin how about 80 to 20 split, and of course she will be taking the 8%, and then Megumin agreed and said to let's do this, and she thought that it was right, and she forget that she was that kind of girl. Aqua said they were taking a high-level quest next, and Megumin agreed and said that she wants to escort them on their journey. And then Aqua said that it was a sure thing. Aqua said since she can fire multiple bursts, and if she just doesn't mind, then if she could share a portion of that with her. And then Kazuma said, sharing some of the magic. What was that supposed to mean? As they two are such close friends. Then Megumin said if she was sure, as she won't be holding herself back if she knew. And then Aqua replied and said that there was no problem. And then consumers thought that that was bad, as he can already see the quest failure flag rising. And there was no way he can convince Megumin to back off with just regular persuasion. He knows, and then he said to Maggie if she was really fine with that, and then she replied and said that she doesn't think Aqua's proposition sounds all that bad. Her burst magic was going to get much stronger, however, shooting bursts continuously. If she thinks it was going to satisfy her, he asked, and then he replied and said that he don't want to see Maggie's burst magic treated so recklessly. And he said to her to please remember those days they spent shooting at the Dullahan Castle, and being there with her every day made him realize that she doesn't need to rely on people or items. All Maggie's bursts need are love and aesthetics. She replied and said that she never thought she would be getting a lecture from Kazuma, and she further said that he was right as she doesn't need to rely on other people or items, and she was going to decline Aqua's offer. And then he finally thought that yes, the flag was invaded, and then she said that, what about Aqua's living expenses? And then he said that that was not something Megumin needs to worry about, and he thought that he was sure the potion would have been a fake anyway. And then she said that, but if it didn't spend all her money on the assumption that she could rely on her, and she feels a bit sorry for her, and then he said that Megumin was being oddly diligent, and then she asked that, what was that supposed to mean? And then he said that, well, she was an archpriest, and he was sure that Aqua could handle a volcano dungeon if she tried. And then she said that maybe he was right. He also said that she has got a lot of mana by nature, and he was not going, so it has got nothing to do with him. And then she said that, though he said that he was not going to just cry his eyes out, and then tag along anyways. And then he replied and said that no, it was not that time. Afterward, those two were the ones who got wrecked and ended up crying. In the end, All 4 of them were needed for the quest, and it turns out the potion had been a sham, just as he expected. Her name was Maggie. She was an adventurer. Today she was on a subjugation quest with her friends, and then she asked Kazuma, why did they have to take a quest that was so far away? He replied and said that there was no other choice. And however, none of that matters right now. Whose fault was it that they were in debt? And that was right. It was his useless goddess. And then Aqua came and said that why he said that there was something that has been bothering her for a while now. And there was something stuck on Kazuma's butt, and that something was a burr. Megumin thought, it's been an hour since she noticed its existence, and it is like that topple only starts shining in the dark of space, and it seems she was the only one who noticed it. And she thought that she should tell him out of courtesy. And then they decided to tell him, and then Megumin said to Kazuma there was a burr stuck on his burr. And then he replied and said that where did she think she was looking? And then Aqua replied and said that Megumin was such a pervert. And then Megumin thought that direct confrontation was no good and maybe an indirect one. And then she said that there was a lovely star shining on Kazuma's butt. And then Kazuma replied and said that what nonsense was that child spouting, and then Aqua again said that Megumin was such a pervert. And then Megumin thought that she was at a loss, and it was such a stupid situation. All she needs to do is explain it to Kazuma gently. And why does she feel like she was being driven into a corner? And then Kazuma said to him that what was wrong. If she was feeling ill, and then she said that to Kazuma, what was that stuck on his pants? And then he checked and realized that was a plant seed. And he thought that when did it get stuck there? And then Aqua came and said that walking around with that thing stuck on him and how embarrassing it was. And then Kazuma asked her to shut up, and then Megumin thought that, well, she guessed she should say they go to the bottom of that. And it was not a dead joke. And then Kazuma asked Megumin if something was wrong and if she was okay. And then she thought that, why, even though the problem was solved, there was still this lingering uneasiness in her chest. And she thought that she should have just said it instead of getting all bugged up. And then Kazuma said that he needs to pee. Then she said to don't speak like that in front of a lady. And he agreed and said that that was right. There was no need to be tactful in their group, whatever it was. He wants to say and to just say clearly. And then Kazuma replied and said that so the useless goddess sees herself as a fine lady now. And Megumin said that when the opportunity comes, she will make sure to point out Kazuma's butt loud and clear, losing to her own madness. And then she asked Kazuma that why did they have to take a quest that was so far away, and then he replied and said that he already told her that it was because of her debt, but the trip back home was such a pain. And then he said her to stop complaining. Megumin has been hopefully quiet today, and he asked that if it was something wrong, and then she said loud that no burrs were clinging onto Kazuma's butt, and then she thought that why it feels like she has been waiting for this chance forever, and why was not there any burrs sticking to his butt. It feels like there was some horribly terrifying force coming from his ass, he said. At this rate, she was going to lose her chance to clear that ever-growing uneasiness. If a burr won't stick to Kazuma's butt by itself, maybe she needs to force the hand of fate. And that was right by any means necessary. And then she saw that another burr has stuck to Kazuma's butt, she said, and another child said she was right. And Aqua said that if it could be a flower male man, and the simulation completed, now all she needs to do is attach that bird to his butt without anyone noticing. And it was the end to these pent-up feelings. And then Darkness said to Kazuma that she thinks that there was really something weird going on with Megumin that day. And then Kazuma replied and said, if she was not weird every day. He also said that that's not what he means. And then he asked Megumin that Darkness was just wondering if there was something. And she denied that this was not what it looks like. And then Kazuma asked her that what was the meaning of this. And then Aqua and Darkness saw a monster. And then Megumin asked, what was he trying to do with her body? And then he replied and said, it was not like that. It looks like a lot of burrs are sticking to Darkness, and maybe Megumin should try pointing it out. And then Megumin replied and said that she seems to be enjoying whether she points it out or not. Burst today, burst yesterday, and surely burst tomorrow, she said to Kazuma. She did it, she added, and she also said that if he did see it. Then she said, her beloved greatest burst magic. She turned to Aqua and said, use your godly water spray to extinguish the fire. Aqua replied, leave it to me. My godly motive spray will extinguish any fire it hits. Darkness told Kazuma, the heat is invading my armor. Megumin exclaimed, this is the best. What a wonderful life. She wished those days would continue forever. Then a lady came and said, Megumin's hobby burned down the entire thicket. It's private land. The landlord is fuming. With Kazuma as her guardian, they demanded compensation from him. Megumin said she would be taking her leave. Kazuma asked her to wait a moment. "Who is Megumin?" she replied. "Just passing." Eye patch came in, Delis said. Kazuma said, if it was so, and looked him in the eyes. "Listen well," he continued. "It's a bit tactless to interfere with other people's hobbies, but her burst magic pastime is now banned." She asked him to wait and said, "What is there left for me if you take away my burst magic?" He replied, "There are surely other things. Let's see, for example." "What example?" she asked. "That's all," she remarked. She was thinking that, he refused. She was not thinking that, he continued. "In order to de-explosify her, we need a plan." She requested Kazuma to stop. He replied, "We're cutting off a source of debt." "I don't want it," she said. "Stop that, not the burst." Darkness said, "Attempt 1, fixing the hobby." "Leave it to me," she replied. "I'll come up with a good replacement pastime." Megumin said, "It's fine, really." Darkness said, "Look at it. It's scared nature's beauty. I can give her special instructions." Megumin replied, "Leave." Aqua said, "Now it's my turn," and introduced muscle training. Muscle training was great, but she fell down because of her calves, and it didn't work out. Attempt 2 was ascetic training. Kazuma asked, "Is meditation helping you quit burst?" She replied, "Bakuretsu." Attempt 3 was the magic item. They tried an item that prohibits burst magic, called Memory Be Gone. "That name doesn't sound good," she said. "How about that first?" Megumin asked. "The effect is only temporary," Kazuma said. "Is it smart to try that?" He asked if she would stop her burst hobby. She refused. He tried to make her drink something and asked if it helped her forget burst magic. Her demon eyes turned white. "If there was something important," she replied. Kazuma asked if she was okay and if she knew who he was. "Kuzu, wait," she replied. "That's not it. I can't remember. However, it feels like words gushing out of my mouth." She said something like, "Darkness, blacker, black, darker than dark." Kazuma said surely it was. "The only thing I want to remember," she said, "she beseeps." The combined weather with her deep crimson, even when she lost memory, kept chanting. Kazuma said, "I thought something like this might happen." He went to say, "Aqua, I need a favor." Aqua asked, "What is it?" "If you need to rely on me, you can rely on that goddess Aqua." "Did you see about that burnt thicket?" Megumin asked, "What's going on there?" Finally, she returned to consciousness. Just a bit further, he said, "Wait." "We're far from the city," she said, holding him. "Why?" she asked Kazuma. He said, "I don't have amazing passion like you, but it's something I admire. By carrying you through your routines, we can have a mutual relationship. It was the first time I carried you before the burst." "That's far enough," she replied. "Leave the rest to you." She thanked Kazuma. "That really was the best," she said. She tried her burst and said, "Kazuma really was the best." Kazuma asked, "Why do you love burst magic so much? If you can't stop using it, the least you can do is tell me." "That's because," she replied. "Let me explain why burst magic is so wonderful." "Explosive magic is great," Kazuma interrupted. "You don't need to share," he said. "Fine," she said. "Please listen to what I have to say." "It's not the only one," she said. "It's going to be a long tale. Let me say just one thing. It's not like just anyone's back will do." Incidentally, the debt was cleared after a hot spring rose to the site of the burnt-down thicket. The effects include beautiful goddess-like skin. It's not quite known who did it, but that's another story for another time. Megumin asked Kazuma if he had found any good quests. He said, "I have for them, especially for Megumin." "This should be a perfect fit," he said. "Exterminate 10 giant toads before the day is over," she refused. "Why did he come up with these ideas?" she asked. Besides accepting such a quest at that time, she didn't want to do it. "It seems that has become an emergency quest because of the sudden massive outbreak." He said, "The reward is pretty good too." "But there's nothing else," she said. They were having some money problems. He asked Megumin if she doesn't like using her burst magic to defeat enemies in one hit. The other day felt really good, she said, and the strategy they were using. They should match their interests, he said. "Let me explain." There was a certain routine of that type of hunting. The way she does it is that she has a tank who gathers all the enemies in one spot, and an attacker whom closes them all up at the same time. "What was the tank?" they asked. "They don't need to know what it means," he said. "In short, with Darkness there, she can catch all the frogs in the same burst." Darkness said it would rather not have anything to do with frogs anymore. He said, "Go and watch from the sidelines." "What was he saying?" she asked. If he had no need for goddess powers, he asked to rely on her more. Attention seekers were too annoying. They decided to go, and he said to Darkness as she was holding his feet to go and get Megumin. They should also serve as the revenge, so make sure to settle this once and for all. After all, that was a job only Megumin can do, he said to Megumin. I will leave the rest on her. They should go already. Someone asked him, why didn't he bring any other magic? She said she was an arch-wizard, he replied, so he invited her. This was not what he was promised. They were far from just one shot. That was a bit. A job only she can do was not well. She said she could have done this even without her burst. While other people pursue normal things, Kazuma looks at them and accepts them just the way they are. Truly, she couldn't be happier than to be able to join that party. She said, now let me show the monsters the true power of her burst. She said to Kazuma to please observe closely and asked what he was doing. And that was such a good story. They said to wait. There was still more coming. Now she's being eaten too. Megumin said, even if he tells her to be shooting like this, then not again. She doesn't want to be covered in slime again. Aqua said, she has been thinking about how no one will be left behind, just because they were useless. Darkness asked what was the meaning of left behind, and what was she talking about? Megumin said, anyways, they need to revise their plan for the next time. It was nothing. She said, let's do their best next time. Megumin said that there were finally some decent quests, and she was forced to wear that outfit. There was no other choice without that side job. The debt they three accrued by eating and drinking would cost them everything they have, but still forcing an art wizard to do that sort of part-time work. Then she saw a board and a maid cafe Kazuma was written over it, and she realized that. So it has come to that, and the darkness blacker than black, and the darker than dark, she thought, and then she asked Kazuma that besides what makes him think that she can just step in front of the public and start serving food, and she never expected that from him. And if he doesn't get cocky with her, and then Aqua came and said that that sort of job was easy peasy, and asked her that, how would she like her perfect waitress style, and she may praise her now. She said to Kazuma, then Kazuma replied and said that she was an idiot and she was so mean. And what is the big deal? And she knows nothing, and he said her to look over there. And then there was the mess, and she apologized. And she said that why was it happening to her? And then Megumin said that what does she think she was doing? And she said to hold on and to Aqua to look again. And then Megumin said that everyone likes her. And then Kazuma said to Aqua that a maid cafe was not just about serving food. It was about being unordinary, which means it was about selling the fantasy and tired from work, and on the way home, and if she does think people will stop by for mere food, and they come there to therapy, and then Aqua replied and said that even if she wears these clothes, with her physique, it was clearly impossible for her. Kazuma replied and said that that was not true, calling her crazy-headed girl, and then one man said that big melon are big melon and small melon are small, and have their own merits, and he doesn't dislike them, and another man said that was right. There are other people like him who won't stand up for older women to the crazy-headed girl, and then one man said that he too is a man who can enjoy the image of a slightly rustic beauty. They were expecting great things from them, they said to the crazy-headed girl, and then she started to cry, as everyone was saying that. She thought that Megumin was in high spirits, and she won't lose to her, and she will do her best too, and then Megumin also said that she will do her best. Kazuma said that they were lacking in workforce and the kitchen, and he thought that if they can keep this up, they should be able to repay the debts somehow. And then the omelette was done, and then Megumin was serving. And then one man said to Megumin, calling her Chan to do that thing if she knew. And that thing where she chanted the omelette, and then she replied and said that she did very well as Crimson Black Blaze King of Myriad Worlds, the laws of nature amplified. All she did was ask for a good luck and charm to make the omelette tasty. And this George really goes all out. She chanced she was the reason of all the universe's correspondence, and she remembered that chanting that at last, the Atlas collapsing destruction. Let the eternal hammer descend upon her foundation, and the burst happens, and then she thought that that was so refreshing. And Kazuma realized that she way overdid it, and the debt ended up multiplying. Her name was Megumin, and Kazuma and her were returning home, and then Megumin said to Kazuma that she ended up finishing just a single page. And there was still 15 left, and what she was going to do. Then Kazuma replied and said that her butts was rubbing against his back, and he said to her to do not be so loud when carried. This manga is a tale of Demon King Megumin and her friend's generation of supremacy filled with glory and anguish. And then she tried her burst, and she said that that should fill 100 pages, And then Kazuma said to her that, like he said, stop fooling around when she was being carried or butt rubbing. Kazuma also said that he thought that those trips were the biggest waste of his life, and then she replied and said that Kazuma was a fool. And then she was massaging. Then she said that defeating the Demon King was their ultimate goal. There was no way that improving the speed of burst magic was a waste of time. Kazuma replied and said that it was no good, and ignore the voice coming from her heart. And he also said then, what about improving that shitty fuel consumption a bit as well? Then she asked him to be dead silent. That was a grave situation. She finally got her own house. She has gone and reverted back to being neat. She was too smart to become idle, even though she had this relative sense of danger. And then she requested him to don't forget, and she said that anyway, Kazuma has recently done barely any quests, idling and slacking off from morning till night. And he was saying that she was wasting his time. Their ultimate goal to destroy the Demon King so she may become the strongest Demon King. And then she also said to Kazuma that he is going silent when things don't go his way, and she said that they truly are cast from the same mold. But he was still dead silence. She said that, but now the burst has worn her out and tomorrow she will take the lead. Kazuma thought that tomorrow the devilish word that will charm any need. Then there came a girl, her name was Yun Yun, the self-proclaimed. She means the one everyone acknowledges to be Megumin's rival, and she thought that if they were rivals, she didn't mean to run away when she heard that loud voice, but she couldn't help it. She had barely any experience visiting friends today. For sure was the day she beat Megumin. And then she waits and said that Megumin was not her friend. They were rivals today for sure. Megumin and her will end their destiny, and then she said to herself, to do not forget, and tomorrow she will take the lead, and she thought that would tomorrow be better in the devilish world. Aqua said to Kazuma that final shitty neat god blow, and surely he has not forgotten, and then he asked what he forgot about. She replied and said that she will never allow her lowly servant to turn into recluse, and then Kazuma asked whom she was calling her servant. She replied and said that what he was asking at Kazuma does not hurry and defeat the Demon King. And her name was Aqua. She was the opposite of the clear-headed her. The crazy-headed she meant happy-go-lucky person, as always healing their group with an inextinguishable smile. She said that she will be in big trouble, and then Kazuma said to Maggie, calling her crazy-headed wizard to do something about this. Megumin replied and said that she can't ignore that comment. Then she also said that she will take any opportunity to strike a pose, even when tired. And that was her justice. Then Kazuma said that it was so noisy, and he sighed and thought that for real though they have got a lot of debt, and it was not realistic to always seclude herself in their home, and then they thought that it looks like Kazuma will end up soon. Kazuma said, let's go. The great adventure to defeat the Demon King, and then Aqua said that that was the spirit to Kazuma. Megumin thought that she did something tomorrow when she was tired from the burst. However, this might not be a bad way to kickstart a grand new adventure. Aqua thought that so that she may extend back to heaven, and so that she may rid herself of that new debt, and she said that too, let's leave that land behind them fast, and then Aqua saw and said that why was Megumin striking another pose? Kazuma thought that, to be honest, he would rather not go anywhere with those two, and they both start fighting. And she was ongoing pose. Megumin said that, so they were going on a quest after all. Kazuma said that he would rather go to a faraway land alone than Aqua start fighting, and said that she doesn't care what the reason may be. And she said to just leave that region behind. Kazuma applied and said that she was supposed to be a goddess, and she said to don't bail on a debt. She replied and said that, why not? As she was sure Kazuma can also leave his debts unsettled if she just escaped with her. Kazuma replied and said to don't be stupid, as bailing on a debt was the worst act a man can make. Megumin said that it is barely out of his mouth, and already he loses to the temptation of escaping on the bail. And that's their Kazuma. And he asked her to shut up. Her name was Yun Yun, turning over a new page today. For sure she will beat Megumin. Kazuma said to Aqua that if she was an idiot, as she was going to be known as an arsonist before they even start their adventure. And then Megumin thought that what they were doing, and then her rival Yun Yun saw them and thought that if they were going somewhere far. But she could not hear well. She needs to get a bit closer. And then Aqua said to do not push her, calling him lecher. And then she said, Ak, and everyone seems to be ready. And she said, let's start by lighting the house on fire. By cutting off the retreat, the dedication for this journey will grow. And then darkness heard and said that they say leaving that country under the pretext of going on a journey, if it was not the real motive, so that she can bail on her debt. And she came and said to Kazuma and Darkness and Aqua about there. She said that that was beyond pathetic, and Aqua said that it was Kazuma's idea. Kazuma replied and said that it was 1000% her idea, calling her trash goddess. Then Aqua replied and said that Kazuma has debt too. And if they were not the same, and with him as the leader, self-proclaimed, they were a group of 4. For years to come, people far and wide will be talking about the story of Demon King Megumin's sudden appearance and its strongest main character. She was Darkness, the Crusader. Her style might be just slightly better than her anyway. The legend of going the soul leads them has begun. Now was the time to depart, and then Darkness said that calling his female friend trash just like that. Kazuma's verbal abuse was really on point that day, and Megumin said that just barely if it was right. Darkness said that besides, she was drowning debt, and what about those traveling expenses? Kazuma replied and said that that's right, and there was no journey for them. Aqua also said that it was no way. Megumin said that so, they were not going on an adventure. Darkness replied and said that yeah, as urgent as the experimentation of Demon King was now not the time, and anyway, they have ignored even the normal quests for a while now. And after she had already psyched herself ready for it, Darkness should learn to read the atmosphere, Megumin said. Then Darkness said that what she was doing. In a sense, she should actively take requests to regain her intuition. And if she does that, the worry of traveling expenses should also disappear, and she replied. Then said that it hurts. Aqua said that it is such a sound argument that she was lost for words, and it could be that Darkness was the framework of that group's common sense. Darkness replied and said that it was a cliché request, but she requested to please keep poking. Megumin said that even if it is a cliché reply, then she requested learn to read the atmosphere, and it was the objection as she was the framework of common sense. Darkness replied and said that she got it, and to just keep poking the gaps in the armor like that. She replied that she was glad that everyone was a useless framework. Kazuma came and said that today's Darkness was relatively decent. Darkness replied and said that it was so rude, as she has always been an honest person. Aqua said that that was right to Kazuma, as Darkness never speaks any nonsense. Darkness loves slimes, and Aqua and Megumin both hate slimes, and Darkness said to lead to this quest without complaining. And the only shortcut to their ultimate goal was to fight, and then the quest completed, and Darkness was sorry that she thought she could get into today's rhythm if she disappeared into the turmoil. Megumin replied and said that she could say that, or she could say she gave in to her lusts. Then her rival said that she was barely managed to avoid completely burning up. All she wanted was to get along with Megumin. She means to have a match with her, and she said that they must be somewhere far away by now, but she saw that they came back, and then she started running. And then Megumin saw something, and then Kazuma asked Megumin if something was wrong. Then she said that she thought she just heard the unpleasant sound of dancing blubber, and she asked him to don't call her Megumin. And she saw that slime came off in the bath, and then Aqua said to have a magic item to motivate everyone, and they went back to neat mode, and then Megumin requested her. Then she replied and said that that was quite the occasion having her visit her shop alone. She said that alcohol Darkness gave as an apology, and Darkness was enjoying the lingering slime. Megumin said that and requested that there was no time for chit-chat, and she said to hurry up and hand it over, and no, at this rate, she will never become the great Demon King. She also said that what useless dropping blubbers for a lich seems every last one of her was looking for a fight. Because of that, she wants a free magic item. Aqua said that what kind of reason was that, then she again requested her that she drooping bottom was also starting to irritate her. Aqua said that at their first, she said please, and then she threatened her, and which one is it? And she also said that how about that thing from before? Megumin replied and said that she must hurry, as there was not much time. Then she replied and said to do not tell her the Demon King's army has begun their assault. After 3 days, if they won't go on a journey, and if she doesn't hurry up, her inner adventurous fire will awaken, and then the feeling of every day being good if she just gets her daily burst will erode. And she thought about 3 persons saying see you next life, and one second one who saying bye-bye, and the third one was saying sayonara. And then Megumin said that napping every day after the burst, she was about to lose to the temptation, and then she started her burst, and then the girl said that to please wait and not the store. Megumin found the 0 results, and she said, don't leave her flame of motivation. And that was it, the black flame of motivation that once within an evil eye was growing smaller by the hour. And then she was feeling a bit hungry, and then she said to calm down to her inner slots. And then there was a person, and he saw Megumin, and he said that she was the crazy-headed person from Kazuma's group, and Megumin thought that it was time to head home and eat a nice meal, and then slack off. and the person again thought that Kazuma's party sure was something. And then they were partying, and then someone knocked at the door, and then she thought if he was a visitor. In the end, the idle days come back, and then Kazuma said that talking to herself was a bit much to Megumin. Megumin said that what he was talking about, as she tends to be misunderstood, but she was not quite character. She was quite verbose and loves talking a lot, and then her rival thought that this time for sure she and Megumin. Then Megumin said that to please don't say that she talked to herself a lot, as he was not thinking of her as some crazy-headed person he was. There were the people in some library, and they have a underwear on their hands. Then one person said, "This is a gift for thine continued patronage." Once again, the shopkeeper hath bought in a half-cursed item. Magical underwear that will cause other people to fall in love with him. If he gifts these to someone of opposite gender and try put them on, they shall instantly become attracted to him. Then another person said, "I expect disastrous results for him," calling him an adolescent adventurer. He realized that, like hell, he can use these. If the other person puts these on, that's not the issue here. If they were at the point where he can give someone panties without them refusing when the relationship was already at a point where those were not needed, and he said, "Those are completely useless." Well, they were of good quality, so they should not just throw them away. Yes, he was Kazuma, waving panties around during a quest break. He thought, if I was just meant to come across a hottie who has lost her panties by chance, as if something like that would happen. Then he said to Megumin if she did already change her clothes, as it was time they headed out. She said, "What about that?" Then he asked her what was wrong if she was feeling ill. She replied, saying her panties were stolen by an ape. Then he asked her if she was for real. There is a large pack of stealing ape monsters living nearby. Not only do they cause harm to the locals, she has heard that they are quite the headache for adventurers. She said one of them came through the window and snatched her panties in an instant, even the spare clothes she had put aside. She can't believe she made such a mistake. Then Kazuma thought, what was going on? It feels like it is getting hot in there, even though from the outside it looks like nothing has changed. Then she asked him if he did not stare at her things. He replied, saying that he didn't, and he swears he didn't look. Then Megumin thought, being attacked by an ape sure was a disaster. But fear not, for every cloud has its silver lining. Then Kazuma said, giving her a panty, "Here she goes." There was an extra pair of panties. He said to wait, and he was just not carrying those around for a hobby or something. It was totally by chance that he was given these at Wiz's store. Then Megumin said, I expected her to believe that, as if anyone could give underwear to Kazuma, who has been given the nickname of Oni-chan, who loves girls in panties. Then Kazuma asked, when was he given such a pleasant nickname? He was not going to refute that. She wished she was dead, and he said to wait. It was that Vander guide who forced those panties upon him. Then she replied, saying, these women's underwear not only did a demon wear them, but then they were rubbed against his face. And now he was trying to force them upon her. And what kind of advanced pervert play was that? She said, what the hell was wrong with him today? She further said that he was twisted lolicon. This can't seriously be happening. She said to him to don't come any closer. He replied, saying that there's been a catastrophic misunderstanding. Then she said, requesting him to not even a step closer. She fell down. Then he apologized, saying that he should not have tried to suddenly thrust the panties upon her. She also said that she too completely misunderstood the sudden thrust of panties upon her. Then he also said that to tell her the truth, these panties, not sure how to explain this. When she give them to another person, that person will somehow fall in love with her or something. He didn't know if that was true, but it does sound a bit suspicious. In any case, she said, to forget these and think of some other coping method. She said that she wouldn't mind. Then he asked, saying if she was really fine with that. She replied, saying that she was the Crimson Demon Clan's greatest wizard. This sort of shady item should have no effect on her. She said that she don't think these will work. Then she thought, how should she put this? Then she thought, even without, she already had a problem. Then she asked Kazuma, and Kazuma asked if she was sure that she was fine with that. She replied, saying that there's in the unlikely event that these panties do work. Then Megumin looked towards the thicket. There was an ape. It was the thieving ape. Her panties were on his hands, and he was trying to eat them. Then he said that a male that completely ignores the owner's age, physique, those panties it is carrying. There was no mistaking it. They were hers. Megumin replied, saying that if he wants her to destroy him. Then he said to let's chase after it and get those. Then he reminded Megumin of her leg, and he held Megumin on his shoulder, saying to hold on tight. Then she said it was just one hit from her burst, but he denied, as the panties were turned into charcoal alongside the ape. He said to let him handle that. Then she asked that what can he do? He replied, saying that he can't use bow and arrow with a single hand. Snipe was not an option in that case. Maybe he could take them back with steel. Anyway, it was slowly getting away, because he was carrying Megumin with him. He was not sure if he can reach, but this was the final chance. Then Megumin asked him, requesting him to make it in time. The fight begins, and he said that how should he put that? He did his best, if she knows, but the result was simply an accident. He requested to do not misunderstood. Then she said that if that was all he wanted to say, then she used her burst, and burst punchlines were the worst. So in the end, he came back all this way without wearing anything. There were a couple pieces that survived the burst anyway. They couldn't witness the effect of those magical panties before they were turned to ash. However, Kazuma said that for her these here were magical bread that he received as a part of the set. Darkness, or in the case, even Aqua was fine. Kazuma said that he would like her to try these on as an experiment. Then Darkness said that she will definitely not lose to this sort of item. Aqua said that she will think about it if he treats her to a month worth of drinks. Then Megumin came and said that she minds explaining to her why they just skipped her like that. Megumin came and she was singing a song called Bakuretsu. Then she goes to Kazuma and Darkness, and Aqua were also there. She was having something in her hand, and then Kazuma said, "Let me ask, just in case, what was that?" And she replied and said, "If I didn't make it clear, I found that cute thing meowing in a black alley." And then Kazuma said that was no cat, as he thought she was bringing home another cat, so they prepared a bunch of stuff for one just because she said it was mewing doesn't automatically make it a cat. And minotaurs don't meow, he said. For crying out loud, I've got a bad feeling about this. And then he asked Darkness to tell her and then to think that it would grow this big in an instant as a human. She was no match against that thing. There was a pet. It is making a pet out of her instead. It was such a humiliation, and then they said to just go. And then Megumin said, so she could use some help with preparing things ready for their child. And then Kazuma said, wait, I didn't say you could keep it. You need to return it immediately. This is for your own good. And then Megumin replied and said, what are you saying? I already gave it a name, and the name was Mino Manzaburo. And then Kazuma said, this loli came up with another weird name again, and she said, anyway, I'm keeping it. And she asked to hear her, and she was keeping it. And then she started her emergency quest, look after the lost Minotaur. And then he said, I got it. And he requested to stop the chanting. And then she was with him on the roads. And then Kazuma realized, good grief, as Megumin has been completely captivated by that thing. And Darkness said, at that rate, we can't go on any quest anymore. And she said to Kazuma, why did you give her the permission? Kazuma replied and said, maybe we should have tried stopping her before. Anyway, everything was going to be fine. Just have some patience, he said to her. And then he asked, how will it be fine? Then he said, it's a Minotaur after all, and even though it is just a child, it can't stay in this town forever. And with that in mind, there was only one possibility. And then Megumin was shaking her hand to his hand. And then she said to that little person, you sure are smart. What should we play next? And she said to him, if you see something, be careful, you might trip and fall. And then she saw a poster of her pet on the wall. And she said, we should go. So in short, it seems the Minotaur was some rich person's pet. And while she was taking it for a walk, she came across the poster for a lost pet. And then Kazuma said, cheer up. I see you even more drained than what you would be after a burst. Then she apologizes and said, just let me stay like this for a while. That kid really was someone else's pet, and Kazuma must have realized that too. And then even she thanked Kazuma for going along with her fantasies. By the way, Kazuma looks like someone else might be a bit depressed as well after she got all these. Kazuma said to both girls, just leave her be. Her name was Megumin, and she requested that she need him to pretend that he was her older brother. Kazuma replied and said, calling her crazy girl, that her story makes no sense, so how about she starts from the beginning? Besides, he thought she hated being compared to a loli or anything similar. Then she replied and said that that may be true, but there was no need for him to call her a crazy girl. And then she asked him to please keep this a secret from the others. And then he asked what that was about. And then she said that what was wrong, and he said, come on and just blurt it out. and he asked if she needs to pee, and she replied and said that that was not it. She replied that she wants to visit a breast enlargement salon, and it just so happens that they are advertising a sibling discount. It's not like she was yearning for a bigger chest or anything, if he knew. She just thought that her chest was getting a bit stiff, so she could go for a massage. And then he replied and said that stiffness he sees, it must be some unseen force that was working hard on her melon. And he said that, but for a guy like him to visit a beauty salon. And then she said that, by the way, they also have something called muscle enhancement. And apparently it works wonders. And then he said, let's go. And then she said that he sure was easy to convince. And then he said that it really looks like something straight out of TV. And then she asked about the TV, and if it was something from his world. She said that this was a regular, top-class salon. It was so highly regarded that just being there was making her excited. And then a girl came, and she welcomed them. And then she asked if that was their first time visiting their establishment. And then they said, yes, they would like to apply for the sibling discount. And then the girl replied and said that, yes,